My name's Daryl. I'm 38. White guy. I live in a small town in central Pennsylvania, the kind of place where your boss was your baseball coach 15 years ago and the diner still has ashtrays welded shut on the tables. I run a mobile electronics repair business. Phones mostly, but I've fixed everything from cracked iPads to a woman's electric toothbrush once. She insisted it was sentimental. I work out of a van and a little back office behind a dry cleaner. I'm not rich, not flashy. I drink my beer cold and cheap, and I like to keep my life simple. But this story isn't about me. Well, it is, but not the me I like to be. It's about the version of me you meet when you lie to my face and laugh behind my back. That version of me wakes up real slow, but he doesn't sleep once he's up. This starts with Dave, my best friend since the 7th grade. We were tight growing up. Built ramps in his backyard, learned to drive in his dad's 95 GMC Sierra, shared a bottle of wild turkey at 17 that we puked into a tackle box. Real brotherhood stuff. I even introduced him to the girl who'd become his wife. They divorced eventually. She was too good for him. We all knew it. Even she figured it out after a while. Dave inherited a pawn shop after his uncle died. Nothing fancy. One of those cluttered joints that smells like mildew and regret, full of dusty guitars, scratched DVDs, and power tools missing their cords. But it was his, and I respected that. 2 years ago, he called me in a panic. "Bro, I need help. I'm about to lose the shop." I thought he was talking emotionally. I said, "Man, you've had it rough, just breathe." "No, financially," he snapped. "The township's hitting me with penalties for back taxes. They're gonna take the damn building if I don't make a payment by next Friday." He sounded like a guy hanging off a ledge, and I, being the soft idiot I was, leaned over with my wallet. No questions. No hesitation. I wired him $8,000. $8,000. I could have upgraded my van, cleared my credit cards, or finally gotten a vacation that didn't involve me eating Pringles in a parking lot. But I didn't think twice. This was Dave, my brother in everything but blood. He told me I saved his life. He even cried a little when he said it. His voice cracked. Told me he was going to turn it around, no more missed payments, no more beer at lunch. Said he had a plan. I believed him. Hell, I was proud of myself. That I did a good thing today, kind of proud. For about 10 days. Until I ran into a mutual friend at Wawa who said, "Hey, I saw Dave's photos from Atlantic City. He hit the Borgata with some buddies. You go with them?" I remember staring at my coffee, not sure if I'd misheard. Wait. When was this? Oh, 2 weekends ago. He was living it up. Had a stack of chips like this. I didn't hear the rest, because that was the weekend after I wired him the money. That was the weekend he was supposed to be saving his damn shop. I stood there like an idiot in the snack aisle, heart pounding, thinking, tell me I didn't just bankroll a blackjack bender. Tell me I'm not that stupid. But I was, and I was about to get a whole lot smarter. Because some people, when they get burned, cry about it. Me? I take notes. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there on my lumpy mattress, replaying that conversation in my head like a bad song on loop. Atlantic City, the Borgata, a stack of chips. That wasn't just a betrayal. It was a middle finger made of poker chips and cigar smoke. I kept trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'd gotten the money from somewhere else. Maybe he won big and used those winnings for the trip. Maybe not. Next day, I did something I've never done before. I checked his social media. Not because I cared what he posted, I'd been off Facebook for 3 years, but because suddenly I needed receipts. Found them in under 5 minutes. Photos still up. Dave on a rooftop deck, sunglasses crooked, drink in hand. Caption, "Always bet on yourself." Cute. Then a picture with a girl I didn't recognize. Platinum blonde, lips like inflatable furniture. And he's holding a wad of cash like a rapper doing promo for a failed energy drink. Big win at the tables tonight. Drinks on me. That was 4 days after he told me he couldn't afford to keep his shop open. For days after he cried into his hands and said the building was the only thing I've got left. I wasn't angry yet. Not the kind of anger that makes you shout or throw something. No, this was lower, colder. The kind of fury that makes you stare at a wall for 20 minutes while your coffee goes cold, imagining every single word you should have said. Because here's the thing about small towns. Lies don't stay buried. They ride around in people's passenger seats and come back wearing new hoodies. By Friday, I was getting weird looks from a couple mutual friends. And then one of them, guy named Trevor, pulls me aside outside the gas station and says, "Hey man, no offense, but did you really loan Dave all that money just to guilt trip him about it? He's been saying you're, like, obsessed. That you show up at the shop breathing down his neck." That was the moment the switch flipped. Because I hadn't been to the shop. I hadn't even asked him for $1 back. I was still trying to believe it was all a misunderstanding. But now? Now he was turning me into the villain in a story I wrote the prologue to with my own bank account. So I texted him. Short. Simple. "Hey, you free to catch up sometime this week?" He took 2 days to reply. "Been slammed, bro. Can we rain check? Appreciate the help again. You're a real one." That's when I knew he wasn't going to pay me back. Not now. Not ever. And worse, he was going to rewrite it. Make me the overbearing friend. The petty one. The desperate guy who couldn't let go of a couple grand. He didn't realize something important, though. I don't yell. I don't chase. I don't beg. But I do take notes. And I still had the wire transfer receipt. His full name. His business address. And 1 or 2 friends from my younger, scrappier days who knew how tax liens work in Pennsylvania. See, this is the part where the story should have ended. But Dave, in his infinite stupidity, had just handed me the pen. And I had 10 years of calm, quiet patience stored up in my spine. You'd think being stabbed in the back would hurt the most. But it doesn't. What really gets you is when the guy who did it makes you sound like the lunatic for bleeding. After that last brush-off text from Dave, I decided to let things simmer. I didn't reply. I didn't chase. I gave it 2 weeks. Then I made what I now call my recon round, a casual stroll through places where Dave still ran his mouth. There's a bar near the river that we used to hit up back in the day, the Rusted Tap. Locals call it the Tap like it's a friend. I dropped in on a Thursday night, got a burger and a beer, and quietly listened. Within 15 minutes, I heard it. "He's got issues, man," Dave was saying. His voice was thick with cheap whiskey and confidence. "Daryl's always been kind of intense. You know? He's great at what he does, I'll give him that. But he's got this whole complex about money. Acts like he's a bank with a baseball bat." He was talking to 2 women and some guy in a backwards Flyers cap. None of them knew who I was. I was at the bar, just far enough to hear, just close enough to feel my jaw clench. Then he leaned in, dropped his voice to what he thought was a conspiratorial whisper, and said, "Guy loans me money, then acts like I owe him my soul. He's showing up at the shop, watching me, making little comments. Like I'm supposed to pay him back the second I breathe." I hadn't been to the shop once. Not once. This wasn't just a lie. It was preemptive character work. He wasn't ignoring me, he was laying foundation in case I ever came looking for justice. It hit me then, he knew what he was doing. And he was good at it. The Dave I'd grown up with? He died somewhere along the way. This guy? This guy was a used car salesman with a god complex and a bar tab he never paid. And somehow he'd convinced himself that what he'd done to me wasn't theft. It was just borrowing between friends. That tired old line people use right before they disappear for good. I didn't finish my burger. I left at 20 and walked out the back, past the dumpsters and that one flickering light that always made the alley look like a crime scene. That night, I sat in my office and started digging. Turns out, in the state of Pennsylvania, if someone doesn't pay their property taxes, the county can sell the lien to a third party, an investor, who then becomes a lien holder. And if the debt isn't paid back with interest and penalties within a set period, the lien holder can initiate foreclosure. That little pawn shop of his? It had unpaid tax debt going back 3 years. It was all public record. And I found something else. The debt wasn't big. A few $100 here, a few grand there. Spread across different years. But manageable if you were using the money people gave you to, pay it. I checked the most recent filings. Dave had a payment due in 45 days. I didn't go to sleep that night. I made a list. 1. Set up a shell company. 2. Buy every lien on the property. 3. Wait. Let him keep talking. Let him keep lying. I wasn't going to knock on his door. I was going to own it. Once you learn how lien sales work, you start seeing the whole system differently. It's like finding out the rules of Monopoly are secretly being played under your neighborhood without anyone telling you. People lose their homes over unpaid taxes not because the county kicks them out, but because someone like me, someone quiet, someone paying attention, buys the debt and waits. That's all a tax lien is, a ticking clock with interest attached. And Dave's pawn shop had 3 of them. I found them by combing through the county's online tax database. Lycoming County, for the curious. You'd be shocked what's public record if you just know where to look. I pulled up the property history for his little storefront, the same one with the busted neon sign that hadn't lit up since 2017, and there it was, 2021 delinquency, $1,423.19. 2022 delinquency, $2,811.75. 2023, current year $3,165.42 due by August 31st. Each lien was eligible for assignment to a third party. Translation: for less than $7,000, I could own the debt on his building. Not the building itself, not yet, but the lien that could become the key to it. The thing is, Pennsylvania law allows private investors to purchase delinquent property tax certificates through a legal process called a tax lien assignment. It's not complicated. It's not shady. It's just quiet, the way I like things. So I called in a favor. My cousin Henry, we're not close, but we've always had a transactional understanding, works in municipal records for a neighboring county. He couldn't help directly, but he pointed me toward a little-known real estate attorney who handles lien assignments for private clients. Guy named Norris. Soft-spoken, efficient, looked like he ate sawdust for breakfast. I met with him over coffee in Williamsport. Told him I had an interest in diversifying into distressed properties. He didn't blink, just nodded, took my information, and said he could arrange the creation of a holding company. Suggested a name, Furnace Creek Holdings, LLC. Sounded fancy, forgettable, exactly what I needed. He filed the paperwork with the state the next day. Within 3 weeks, Furnace Creek Holdings owned every outstanding lien tied to Dave's pawn shop. No one knocked on his door. No letter came with my name on it. It all looked like another cold, boring shuffle of bureaucratic paperwork. He was 3 missed payments away from being foreclosed on by a company that didn't technically exist until last month. And here's the part that really makes me smile. I ran into him during this time. At Sheets, of all places. He was standing by the coffee dispensers, pouring that sludge they call house blend into a 20-ounce cup like he was fueling a tractor. He saw me, gave me the world's fakest smile and said, "Hey man, been meaning to catch up. Things have been nuts." I looked him right in the eye and said, "Hope things slow down for you soon. That's all. Just that. No anger. No accusations. Because I already owned his future. He just didn't know it yet. It's a strange thing, owning someone's screw-up and not saying a word about it. Every time I passed that pawn shop, the sagging awning, the cracked front window with the yellowing We Buy Gold sign, I'd glance at it like a man checking his pocket watch. Tick, tick, tick. The liens were mine now. Furnace Creek Holdings, LLC was quietly listed in the county's lien holder registry as the primary creditor on the property. And Dave? He was out front most days, leaning in a lawn chair with a vape pen and sunglasses on like he was guarding Buckingham Palace. If he was worried, he didn't show it. That's the thing about people like Dave. When life gives them a second chance, they light it on fire, roast a hot dog over it, and call it a comeback. I started seeing him around town more often, at the car wash, at the local dive bar, at the farmer's market, which, ironically, he used to mock. "Who pays $8 for pickles?" he once said. Now he was chatting up a girl who sold kombucha out of mason jars. And every time he looked relaxed, like a man whose debts were either gone or forgotten. I knew from the records he hadn't made a single tax payment since I bought the liens. Not one. And the August deadline for the current year's taxes? Creeping up fast. The county gives a 60-day redemption window after the final deadline. If a lien holder initiates foreclosure and the debt isn't paid in full during that window, the property can be scheduled for a sheriff's sale. I was playing by every rule in the book. And Dave was still playing poker with Monopoly money. One afternoon, I walked into the shop under the guise of needing a replacement laptop charger. I hadn't stepped foot inside since before the loan. It smelled like motor oil, dust, and microwaved beef. Dave looked up from the counter and gave me the same fake grin he always did now. The kind of smile you use when someone you screwed over hasn't exploded yet and you're not sure why. "Daryl," he said, arms out like I was returning from war. "What brings you in, man?" "Need a charger. Lenovo. 65 watt. He rummaged through a milk crate, talking the whole time. Told me how business was picking up, how he had some big plans in motion, how he might do some flipping on the side. The way he said it, you'd think he was about to open a second location, not lose his first. I paid cash. He gave me a friend discount, which made my teeth grind. "Let me know if you ever want to invest in something real," he said as I walked out. "Way better returns than lending, you know?" I smiled. Nodded. "You'll be the first to know." That night, I filed the initial foreclosure notice through my attorney. Legally, Dave would be served within 7 business days. He'd have 60 more to make it right. But I already knew he wouldn't. He was too busy flipping dreams that weren't his. And I was done being his backup plan. There's a moment in every con where the floor gives out. For Dave, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in September in the form of a certified envelope from Lycoming County's Court of Common Pleas. Inside, notice of intent to foreclose on the property located at 117 North Barrow Street, the pawn shop. Return address? Furnace Creek Holdings, LLC. He didn't know it was me. Not yet. But he sure as hell knew what it meant. I found out what happened not through gossip, but through sound. I was grabbing a burrito at the spot called El Norte, 2 blocks from his shop, and I heard him from the sidewalk. Not yelling, shrieking. That high-pitched, "the universe owes me an apology" kind of noise guys like him make when the game finally turns. Foreclosure? What the hell is this? This is my building. I paid the taxes last year, no, 2 years ago. It was like listening to a raccoon try to argue with a parking meter. I peeked in as I passed. Dave was pacing behind the counter, waving the foreclosure notice in one hand like it was a ransom letter, ranting at some poor UPS guy who had clearly just been delivering toner. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I knew what that paper said. I'd written the damn check to make it happen. The notice gave him 60 days to redeem the debt, now inflated with interest, legal fees, and penalties. Altogether, he'd need over $11,000 just to make the whole thing stop. And because he'd ignored the previous lien notices for months, that amount was locked in. He didn't have that kind of money. And he had no idea where it had gone. That's the beauty of holding debt anonymously. To Dave, this was just some out-of-town investor scooping up properties. He probably imagined a man in a blazer making deals over golf, not me eating a burrito 2 blocks away, watching him unravel. The next day, a for sale sign went up in the window of the pawn shop. I nearly choked on my coffee. He was trying to sell it, which was, legally speaking, hilarious because until the foreclosure process was resolved, he couldn't transfer the title to anyone. It would be like selling a car while someone else is holding the keys and the pink slip. Still, I admired the desperation. He even posted about it online. Rare opportunity for serious buyers. Great business location. DM for details. I almost messaged him under a fake name just to see how deep the denial ran. Instead, I just waited. Because I knew what came next. He was going to try everything. Stall the process, beg the county for time, maybe even bluff some friend into giving him a rescue loan. But none of that would work. Because I didn't want my money back anymore. I wanted the building. And Dave? He could keep his pride. It was the only thing he still technically owned. If you've never been to a sheriff's auction in a small Pennsylvania county, let me paint you a picture. It's not glamorous. There are no paddles, no fast-talking auctioneer in a cowboy hat. It's just a stuffy conference room in the basement of the county courthouse, a row of uncomfortable chairs, and the low murmur of people trying to pretend they're not scavenging over someone's mistakes. They go property by property. Open bidding. Must be paid in full by certified funds that same day. No do-overs. No, let me call my guy. If you win, you walk out with a deed. I showed up early. Button-down shirt. Jeans. Clean shave. I looked like a guy buying his first fixer-upper, maybe a tired landlord trying to expand his empire. I brought coffee and paperwork. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. The property came up fourth on the docket, 117 North Barrow Street. Dave's shop. I heard him before I saw him. He burst in 10 minutes late, all frantic energy and sweat. Looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Hair messy. Shirt half-tucked. Clutching a wrinkled manila folder like it could stop a bullet. He scanned the room and paused when he saw me. Not recognition, just confusion. Like a dog spotting a squirrel in church. He sat across the aisle, hunched over, flipping through papers he clearly hadn't read. When the auctioneer called the address, he jerked to his feet. "I'm the owner," he barked. "This shouldn't even be on the list. I paid something toward it last month." The woman from the sheriff's office, calm as a glacier, replied, "Partial payment doesn't stop foreclosure once it's entered judgment. You were notified by mail and certified delivery." "I'm appealing it," he tried. "I've got a lawyer." She didn't even blink. "You're welcome to pursue any legal remedies after the sale." The room went quiet. Then she looked up. "Opening bid is $9,200. I raised my hand. Dave froze. Someone else in the back started to lift theirs, then stopped mid-motion when they saw Dave's reaction. Nobody wants to touch a property with drama still dripping off it. "Do I hear 9-5? She asked. Silence. Going once. Going twice. I turned my head. Locked eyes with Dave for the first time in months. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Sold. 9-2. To bidder number 14. That was me. I signed the paperwork. Paid with a cashier's check. Got a stamped receipt and a temporary deed certificate. When I walked out into the crisp fall air, Dave followed me. "You," he started, stumbling over his rage. "You bought it? Your Furnace Creek." I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just nodded. "You set me up," he whispered, stunned. "No," I said quietly. "You set yourself up. I just showed up to collect." He stared at me like I'd grown horns. Then he said the most Dave thing imaginable. "I would have paid you back. You didn't have to do this." I finally smiled. "You're right. I didn't. But I wanted to." And that, right there, was the real justice. You learn a lot about a man when he runs out of people to lie to. 2 days after the auction, I got a knock on my office door. It was Alan, Dave's old part-time employee. High school kid with bad skin and good instincts. He used to run the counter at the shop on Saturdays, mostly just so Dave could step out for 4-hour lunches. Alan looked sheepish. "You really bought it?" he asked, hands jammed into his hoodie pocket. I nodded. "Yeah." He hesitated, then said, "He told me you were some out-of-town investor. Said he didn't know who Furnace Creek was." I let that hang in the air. Eventually, Alan just gave a little shake of his head, like a kid watching someone stick a fork in a toaster. "I always thought he was full of it," he muttered. "Just didn't think it'd end like this." He paused, then pulled a key out of his hoodie pocket and slid it across my desk. "That's for the back door, and the storage unit out back. If you see a box labeled customer stuff, it's probably not. Just junk he was too lazy to throw away." Then he left, just like that. No drama, no long speech, just another loose end quietly tying itself off. By the time I drove by the shop the next afternoon, Dave was out front with a moving sale sign duct-taped to a busted folding table. A few pawn guitars, a cracked fish tank, and what looked like a milk crate full of VHS tapes were spread out like artifacts from a dead empire. He didn't look up when I parked, didn't wave, but when I stepped onto the sidewalk, he spoke, low, without turning around. "You win," he said. "No," I replied. "I just played the game you started." He turned then, slow, sunken-eyed, older than he looked a month ago. I was in a bad spot, man. I was drowning. You didn't ask for a life raft, I said. You asked for a jet ski and rode it to Atlantic City. He actually laughed at that. Not a happy laugh. The kind that bubbles up when you realize you've burned down the house and all that's left is the couch you pissed on. You gonna keep it? He asked, nodding toward the building. Yeah, I said. But not as a pawn shop. He nodded like he already knew. You gonna run it under your name? No, I said. I'm putting my name back where it belongs. On the deed. That shut him up. Because that's when it clicked. This wasn't about money anymore. It never really was. It was about the years I spent believing we were brothers. It was about being told I was obsessed with what he owed. It was about walking through town and hearing my name dragged through the gutter by a man I once trusted with a key to my apartment. And now the story had changed. People in town weren't whispering about Daryl, the unstable guy who wants his money back. They were talking about Dave. About how he'd screwed over the one person who ever gave a damn. His version of the story didn't hold up once I owned the building. Funny how that works. The first thing I did after the building was legally mine, I changed the locks. Not because I thought Dave still had a key he didn't, but because it felt symbolic. Like I was sealing a door that used to open to betrayal. Inside, the place was worse than I remembered. Just thick enough to write my name in, shelves warped from years of junk piled unevenly, and a back room that smelled like someone had been storing regret and off-brand beef jerky in the same box. It took me 3 weekends and 6 trips to the dump just to make it feel empty. But that was the point. I wasn't keeping anything. Not the pawned guitars. Not the shady inventory. Not even the glass counter where I'd once watched Dave lie to a guy about a rare collector's knife you could still buy on Amazon for $29.99. Clean slate. By October, I'd ripped out the old floors and had a friend from high school, Jason, now a contractor, help me install new hardwood and recessed lighting. He didn't ask many questions. He'd heard about what happened. Everyone had. You can't buy this kind of PR in a small town. People started stopping by during renovations. At first it was curiosity. Then it turned into support. Glad someone decent finally took it over, one woman said. Place used to feel cursed, another muttered. And when I hung the new sign above the door, Barrow Street Repair and Resale, it wasn't just a name. It was a middle finger. With polish. Instead of broken PlayStations and knockoff purses, I stocked it with refurbished electronics, quality tools, and second-hand laptops for local students who couldn't afford the new stuff. I kept prices fair. Offered a 10% discount for anyone under 18 or over 60. Business picked up faster than I expected. Maybe because I actually gave a damn. Maybe because people knew I wasn't there to hustle them. A part of me wonders if they came in just to see if I was real, the guy who didn't scream, didn't throw fists, didn't slash tires, just waited and owned his enemy's house out from under him. And I'll be honest, part of me liked that. Not in a chest-pounding, revenge porn kind of way. Just quietly. Like a man sipping a drink in a chair he built himself. Dave moved 2 towns over. I heard he was working for a guy who sells reclaimed wood furniture at flea markets. Word is, he's still talking. Still spinning stories. Still blaming that psycho Daryl for ruining his big shot. But no one here listens anymore. You can only cry wolf so many times before people start pointing at the wolf and saying, hey, weren't you the one who opened the gate? I still have the original foreclosure notice, the one Dave probably crumpled, then smoothed out again a dozen times, hoping the numbers would change. I keep it in a drawer under the register. Not out of spite. Just as a reminder. That silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just strategy. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in ballpoint pen, a little shaky like it was done in a hurry. I almost tossed it, thinking it was junk or some passive-aggressive church invite. Those still show up sometimes, even after I told Pastor Mark I wasn't into organized guilt. But I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper and $200 in 20s, crisp and new like they'd just come out of a fresh paycheck. The note said, I messed up. I was wrong. You didn't deserve it. I'm sorry. D. No flourish. No long-winded apology. Just 5 flat lines from a man who finally had to look himself in the mirror. I stared at that paper for a long time. Not because I needed the apology, I didn't. And not because I needed the money, I really didn't. I stared because it was the first thing Dave had given me in years that didn't come with strings, excuses, or a hidden agenda. It wasn't enough. Of course it wasn't. But it was something. And sometimes after all the noise has died down, something is louder than everything that came before it. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Didn't post about it. Didn't frame it or burn it. I pinned it to the corkboard behind the register next to the lost and found notices and a help wanted flyer I'd been meaning to update. Every now and then someone notices it. Friend of yours, they ask. I just shrug. Someone who used to owe me. That's all I say. Because the story isn't about bragging. It's about finishing. About the quiet satisfaction of seeing someone else play checkers while you've been playing chess since last spring. It's about never raising your voice, never swinging first, never stooping to their level, because when someone thinks you're too calm to be dangerous, they never see the door closing behind them. And most of all, it's about remembering that revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's a deed. Sometimes it's a key. Sometimes it's a building with your name on it, where the lights stay on, the shelves stay full, and the man who thought he could walk over you drives by at night with nothing left but stories no one believes. So yeah, I took a hit. I got played. I loaned $8 grand to a ghost. But in the end, I own the ground he vanished from. And I sleep just fine.